Coming to you from BRIC House in downtown Brooklyn, this is 112BK. On the show today, an update on the Fort Hamilton delivery fiasco, the Kamoinge Collective, and the Black Women Photo Exhibition. Plus, are you glad I'm here? We'll explain. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Brian Vines, filling in for Ashley Ford, and since it takes two of us to do her job, I'm joined by producer Ross Tuttle.
Hey Brian.
Hey Ross.
Happy to have you back.
Thank you. Very happy to be here. So right off the top, we're going to follow up on the story that we started yesterday about the delivery driver in Fort Hamilton.
Right. We spoke to Carlos Menchaga, the city council member, about it. It was still unfolding during the time, but now I think we know a little bit more about the story. And we have now on the phone Murad Awawdeh. He's the VP of Advocacy at the New York Immigration Coalition.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Mo.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So we saw you yesterday during the press conference, and we know that things were pretty tense out there, but this is the biggest story happening in New York now, on the cover of both of the tabloids today.
Yeah, you know, it really should be getting just as much attention as other cases in similar situations, but this is kind of a unique situation where we've never really had to deal with an army base, right, you know, working in tandem with federal immigration authorities or deputizing their MPs to become federal immigration enforcement agents either.
So we've seen ICE agents outside of courtrooms. We've heard about them popping up all over, whether they're plain clothes or whatever, but this seems to be a new low.
Yeah, you know, Pablo was delivering pizza at the Army base, which he had done many times before, and this time was just different, where they were asking him for different ID than what he provided them, which was his NYC ID, which was the ID he had been using the entire time he had been delivering to them.
Right.
So, you know, we're still trying to figure out, like, what was the motive for them moving this forward. They're saying that they needed to give him a daily pass, which would enable them to do a background check on him, which he signed off on, but we don't know if he actually understood what was happening in the moment because, you know, if you're trying to deliver a piece of, you know, a couple of pies of pizza and you're told, you know, you have to sign this paper so you can get this pass,
right,
you know, I think anyone's just going to want to do whatever you have to at the moment just to get back to your job. You know what I mean?
Was this an instance then of maybe a new protocol that was happening at Fort Hamilton military base, or was it an issue of racial profiling?
I don't think this is a new this is a new protocol that they have put in place. I don't think that that this is something that has been newly initiated within their protocol. I just think that from what we know, this was a random occurrence that had happened at that moment. If it's racial profiling, you know, that's what some folks are alluding to. I don't know if that is the case here, but I do think that there's something nefarious that did happen that led to this being, to him being detained by them and then turned over to ICE agents.
We know that you deal with New York's immigrant population all the time as your work, but the NYIC, do you have anything that you would like to impart to the 900-something thousand of us who do have NYC IDs who might be a little scared to identify yourself now using your municipal ID?
You know, I think that the municipal ID is something that is truly extraordinary, and it's being used by over 1 million people in New York City of all walks of life, all statuses of life, and you know, the ID provides people with, it opens up doors for people. I don't know if this is, you know, an occurrence that just happened this one time, but, you know, I checked out the Department of Defense's, you know, permissible forms of identification, And under their secondary forms of identification, it says that they accept IDs based that are issued by federal, state, or local government. And since this is a local government ID, I'm not sure what exactly went wrong here.
Right. From a local government that's larger than some states in this union. So there's definitely more to be delved into here, but we appreciate you taking the time to spend with us today, and we look forward to following the story and hearing more from you and the work you do at the New York Immigration Coalition.
Thank you for giving me some time, and I appreciate the work you guys are doing too. We love BRIC, and we look forward to your partnership.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Murad.
All right, have a good one, guys.
Coming up, Black Women, Power, and Grace, a photo exhibition. Don't go away. It was more than 50 years ago that a landmark photo exhibit emerged, entitled The Negro Woman. It was a radical installation for the time, depicting the Black woman's elegance and pride. Finding similar inspiration comes Black Women, Power, and Grace. And I recently spoke with the co-organizer of the exhibition and the Kamoinge Collective's Vice President, Russell Frederick. The Black Woman, Power, and Grace, the Times is blowing you guys up, but that's just the beginning.
Yes, I could say that with a broad smile. The exhibit has something that's been in the making for probably about 20 years. Kamoinge, for those who may not know, is a collective of African and African-American photographers formed in Harlem in 1963. Roy De Carava was our first director, and he kind of set a tone, I think, artistically, and also too with socio, with conscience, in photography, that the photographers who happen to be Black be committed to excellence and countering, what a lot of the stereotypical images which appear of our people in media, in publishing. So Kamoinge's, first mission really was to nurture each other because there weren't many photography schools at that time, and also to author our own stories to the highest artistic, creative excellence.
So from the days of its founding till right now, the images that we see of women of color have gone so far forward.
Yes.
And also stayed exactly the same in a lot of respects. So I wonder where the work is now.
The work, I would say, it's interesting because we have, Kamoinge has always been about empowerment, as well as to love, community, and the images that we have created, particularly the men of the group, is always, again, to show a complete fullness and wide range dynamic of really, who our women are. I also have to give a mention to the first woman of Kamoinge, which is Ming Smith, who came into the group in 1973. She is also the first, I believe, Black woman to have her work collected by the Museum of Modern Art. These group of people, I think, had a mission. And it was always to just uplift our people visually, because we know so much of what we see, can really incorporate to how we even feel about ourselves. The psychology of photography is powerful. And with, I think, the group always being committed, to creating work that really showed our virtues. This is something that is timeless from 1963 to right now.
So thinking about that from that 63 moment, like to go from Ming to like Micheline Thomas right now and the work that she's producing and that's coming out. I was at the portrait gallery and I saw that fabulous portrait of Michelle Obama, and to know all the debate that goes back and forth about that and the representation, there's not a lot of that with the photo because of the immediacy and just the clarity that's right there. But there's also a timeless quality to so many of these photos that are going to be on exhibit for the thing. What do you think about that tension between the painted image and the way that the photograph reflects this very contemporary here and now at this moment?
I think, great question, is I think so much of, paintings and art, I think it definitely has its influence from photographs. Even though, painting is one of the oldest art forms, but how we live in a world of pictures that is, and we live in a world that is so visually driven. And from, I think, the time you just walk outside your apartment, you're getting on the train with advertisements, to the magazines, to what we may see on television, our phones, selfies, Instagram, we can go on and on the influence and power of photography. But I do think that there is this, I would say, influence, and also too, dynamic where I think the two even can become one. And I've seen it with some of Ming Smith's work, with some of Adja Cowan's and Anthony Barbosa's work. Adja Cowan's also too was a painter. Roy De Carava was first a painter before he started making photographs. So the relationship between the two is one where I think both influence, and try to balance each other, and and really create a masterpiece.
Are there some thematic things that through line that's running through the exhibit? Yes.
So getting back to that, I got a little bit off topic, but this show, in starting the curating process last year, I started to call for photographs to organize, and later on this year, the photo curation process was, it was John Pindayu's, Adja Cowan's, Daniel Dawson, myself. We requested some of our sisters, but a lot of scheduling conflicts, it just didn't work out. But I think, must have looked at probably over 400 images, 300 to 400 images, and mainly thinking about wanting to have something that was complete of today's woman. Yeah. And our mothers, our grandmothers. What did you whittle it
down to? You started with that 400 plus. What are we going to see at the?
What we're going to see is, I would say, the first image to start the show is an image of Dr. Betty Shabazz.
Iconic.
Iconic.
The oldest image in the whole show.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I think this image kind of embodies what I think all black women, look up to.
This was sort of our Jackie O in the pew moment.
Oh, you said it, brother.
Like from the veil
Absolutely.
to this was our quiet dignity in the face of unimaginable tragedy.
Absolutely. And pain. Yeah. Under attack. Right. At the same time, then becoming a widow. Right. To 5. Yeah. And then, also too, having to pick up the torch of what her husband started. Right. And then to even get her education, despite all of these odds. And not just these odds, also too, the government was unstoppable force to, take down not just her husband, but also to the Nation of Islam and the family. So that image is really, I would say, symbolic of what the show is. And then we have the images even of Lola Flash.
I'm going to ask you to play TV on the radio with me for just a second, because in the monitor, for those of you who don't have the benefit of watching 112BK, as we are a podcast as well, we're looking in the monitor of a picture of Dr. Shabazz, who's standing there from a 1964 photograph, standing at the rear entrance of the Harlem church.
Right, exactly, where the funeral was just actually take place of Malcolm X. It was actually in 1965. I believe the gentleman that's standing, to her left is Percy Sutton. That was the attorney who for Malcolm at the time. And Adja Cowan's described the photograph as, you can't probably see it with this distance, but how she was crying. There was a tear, coming down her cheek. But as you can see, the strength, the dignity, the class, exactly, but you could also see some hurt. And and how many of our sisters, just experiencing some pain, but they keep going forward. They don't stop going forward, you know what, to take care of the family, to even also to take care of us.
And this photo stands in concert with another photo from 2002 by Lola Flash of DJ Kinky around the world.
That's right.
From Harlem to London.
Yes, yes. So Lola Flash is one of our newer photographers to the group.
Yeah.
I'm very proud, you know what, to invite her to the collective last year. And she has for 30 years been documenting the LGBTQ community and has made, I mean, incredible documentation. So this again is challenging us on, you know, on how we view women and femininity, as well as identity. And you know what, DJ Kinky in London, you know what?
Standing right in the middle.
In her boy beater.
Staring you right down. Right. In the boy beater.
The boy beater,
looking at you.
Exactly.
Giving you the fullness of her experience.
Absolutely. You know what? Position, and also too, this little smile on the face. So you see some sweetness, you see some strength.
Yeah.
You know what? But you also see a woman. And again, and changing the way I think some of us have been conditioned to think what womanhood is. You know what?
There's
how a
not
lady.
A pressing curl to be seen. She's DJ
Brother,
Kinky's.
I'm about to give you some. Absolutely,
she is.
Absolutely. And here it is, and spinning.
Right.
And spinning on the turntables.
Thank you for coming by and just giving us a snapshot of what we can expect to see. Where are we going?
You go to the National Arts Club on 15 Gramercy Park, New York, New York, in the Gregg Galleries. The exhibit will be on display until June 30th. You could also follow us on Instagram at Kamoinge_images on Instagram. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here.
Absolutely, brother. All the time. Always good.
We've heard the story before. Americans go to the Middle East, havoc ensues. But the new film that we're about to discuss, set in the Middle East, isn't about politics or war. It's about relationships and shared values, but also pronounced cultural and linguistic differences that drive a special brand of comedy and drama.
I feel like you're mad that I'm here.
شو جابك بهالليل؟ في شيء؟
أبداً ما في ولا ضروري يكون في شيء تأجي لعندك يا زلمة.
So I finally met Pierre the other day.
What did he do?
عصبتي.
مجنونة.
Don't put yourself in this situation. It's dangerous.
The film, Are You Glad I'm Here?, was filmed in Lebanon and is a collaboration between two friends who met in college. Filmmaker Noor Gharzzeddine, welcome to 112BK.
Thank you.
And the film screenwriter, Samuel Anderson. Thanks for coming on the show, guys.
Thanks for having us.
So, all right, let's get the alma mater stuff out of the way. You guys went to Bard, yes?
Yes, correct.
And a beautiful friendship ensued, which created a phenomenal film that we'll get the chance to see this weekend right here in Brooklyn, yeah?
Yep. It's showing at the Brooklyn Film Festival Saturday and Sunday, 8 o'clock and 8:30 p.m.
So you are the screenwriter, you're the filmmaker. This is probably the most highly anticipated female leading film based in Lebanon ever going to be shown in Brooklyn. It's probably the only one in the festival,
probably
too.
The only one, yeah. Yeah, it
so how did the story come about?
Well, Noor came to me with an idea about an American girl and a Lebanese woman. And Noor is interested in films that have like an older woman and a younger girl. Like that was what she made a student film that featured like the similar theme. And so she gave me this idea, and then I sort of ran with it, and you know, the characters evolved, and then
we knew we wanted to make a film together in Lebanon, which is where my family is from, and where Sam had studied Arabic, and you know, I was kind of interested in playing with this dynamic between two women who just like would have never normally had an interaction, and then in this film they're neighbors and they meet, and it's kind of just about how they end up affecting each other's lives, and they get into some trouble together, and you know, the film kind of takes a dark turn, but it's dealt with in a playful and kind of dark humor lens. So
what is about that older woman, younger woman dynamic that you thought was rife for mining that you got your friend to get to work on?
Well, I guess I just thought it was like, I mean, it was interesting to explore a film about friendship that was like about a very imperfect friendship, which is kind of hinted at in the title, Are You Glad I'm Here? And it's, you know, it's kind of like an experiment in a way, like putting these two people together. So, you know, Kirsten is an American and she's in Beirut to teach English, and
described as a self-centered post-grad kind of girl who maybe has a little bit of a savior complex running to Lebanon.
She kind of like feels like she, you know, she's graduated from liberal arts school. She knows what's right and what's wrong, and she wants to come get like the life experience that Lebanon will provide her.
I've met that girl here.
Yeah.
I think I've seen her before.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, that was part of her inspiration as recent graduates at the time. And then kind of playing with how these two women will impact each other and like what they give and take away from each other and what is specific about this period in their time that friendship worked out. And so, you know, and then Sam took it and made like a whole exciting story out of it. But
yeah, so I mean, speaking about the older woman, younger girl dynamic, you know, it's interesting to sort of explore different like ideas about, you know, how they view like a self-actualized life, you know. Right. Like how does this 24-year-old, 25-year-old American girl from a liberal arts school interact with like, you know, a 35-year-old housewife with a 9-year-old son? And, you know, like if they have certain similarities such that, you know, there can be a bridge and they talk to each other, they'll quickly run into, you know, very different ways that they view life and what a meaningful life is and stuff. So we wanted to sort of like challenge both characters, but, you know, do it in a way that was sort of like tender, like, you know, giving each person, you know, each person views their understanding as correct. So like, we didn't want to have like either like this Orientalist lens where it's this American girl coming and being like, your way of life is wrong, or like the other one, you know, or the reverse.
Right,
you know?
Being like, you're too young to understand anything. Like, I won't include you in my life. And
so one thing that I've read about the film is that things take unexpected turns and it doesn't follow the same sort of rote kind of structure that you might expect when you're like, I'm going to go see a movie about these two women in Lebanon. So what do you think people, maybe the weight of expectation they might have walking into what they think this film may be versus what you guys actually managed to put up on the screen?
Well, I feel like now we've talked about it in so many different ways that I'm curious as to what anybody thinks they're about to go see. But yeah, I mean, we kind of, you know, the subject matter is a heavy subject matter, and it could easily have been like a very dark, dramatic film, but we kind of handled everything with like a more realistic lens. So like, even in reality, when you're having something horrible happen to you, those things are still intertwined with like moments of like laughter over something that maybe you feel like you shouldn't laugh at because something horrible is happening. But if somebody you love cracks a joke and wants you to, you know, to lighten the mood for you, you laugh. And like, all of these things are kind of intertwined in reality. So we didn't really set out to make like one kind of genre. And so like, I think when reading the script, sometimes people could be like, well, like, I thought this was going this way, and then you did this. Like, it took me a second to get back on board. Yeah. But then I think in the film, because you're watching real humans interact in a real way, it doesn't feel the same way that it might have on the page. And so you kind of just have this like genuine unraveling of like, these things kind of just so happen to happen, and maybe that now makes the movie a thriller, or now makes the movie a comedy, or now makes the, so, I don't know.
It's like life. Nothing is happening in a vacuum in the film.
And you don't have like a genre to your life. Like even if you're a dramatic person, your life isn't a drama.
It might be a real comedy.
Like, so, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we had this comment quite a lot from people reading the script before we'd made it, where they were like, do you think this will, you know, clash? Is this going to be an issue? And, you know, we had faith that, like, sort of, there would be enough tension to keep the viewers, you know, going throughout the movie or whatever, but also like giving them like little things, like bittersweet moments where it's like, you know, a brutal thing and then this cute little moment, and you see like a much more like humanity in these characters, you know, rather than like crafting it all around like narrative purpose, you know?
Well, your actresses at the helm of this thing have gotten rave reviews. Like, people found them really engaging and fantastic. And I want to talk about the language a little bit, because we talked about the little idiosyncratic things that happen with language and the culture clash and when you're meshing and developing friendships. So how did you bring that to the front, where it is a very, you know, if you think you're going to go teach English somewhere, if you're lucky, you'll learn more than you plan to teach.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I always, I grew up in like a home where, you know, both my parents work with languages. My dad's a linguist and my mom like works with dead languages. So I have like always a fixation on how language choice changes dynamics and how language and power are interrelated. So, you know, like we frequently have scenes in the later half of the movie where there's like intentional use of either Arabic or English to, you know, either bring the American girl into the scene or to exclude her, you know, so there's like power dynamics and power shifts, and if you see the movie, it actually plays like a pivotal role in the plot as well.
Yeah. And you know, I grew up in a bilingual household, so I always kind of thought that I would just naturally make a bilingual film, and it's something I wanted to do. And I think a lot of the amusing moments between the Lebanese and American actress were kind of genuine things that happened in rehearsal where, you know, Merwa, who plays Nadine, would maybe have an actual question about an American type thing that Kirsten, played by Tess Harrison, would say, and she would ask her in the rehearsals, and then those things kind of just got it woven into what ended up being like the final script. So it was definitely like they definitely kind of brought a little game of like explaining things to each other, and like there's a moment where Kirsten's character is like, you know, responding to Nadine, and she's like, nice, nice, and, you know, says it a few times, and then Nadine eventually, which was totally improvised, is like, you say nice a lot, like, and that is a very American thing, you know, even if you speak English in another country, you're not always like, nice, nice. So there's a lot of small things like that, and I feel like it brought a lot of like realism and just like humor between them getting to know each other as actual people, so.
Okay, well, we fully have one moment left, and I wanted to ask you about working with all of these women. You're the man who's writing the words. You have a woman filmmaker, these two protagonists who are leading things, so I'm gonna give you about 20 seconds to answer that.
If I'm too obsessed with being a man, then I can't write it very well, but if like, you know, 2 hours into the writing process, I sort of forget who I am and I'm just like writing as Kirsten or as Nadine, then, you know, like, you come back to it and you're like, oh, whoa, this is pretty legit. Like, I thought of this, nice. Like, you know? So you sort of lose yourself a bit. Like, if you're too in yourself, in your gender, in your whatever, you know, like, you know, you can't really expand to other characters very much, so.
Yeah. All right, Noor, give us some homework for this weekend. Where can we see your film?
You can come see Are You Glad I'm Here at the Brooklyn Film Festival. It's showing this Saturday, June 9th at 8 p.m. at Windmill Studios, and then June 10th, Sunday at 8:30 at the Wyeth Hotel.
Very cool. Well,
come see it.
We definitely will take you up on that. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks so much for having us.
Appreciate it. Well, thanks for joining us today. We'll be back next week to talk about masculinity and gun violence, a bougie edition of the Communist Manifesto, BurrowCon for anime heads, and much more. Until then, have a great weekend, guys. Bye now.